Theo Wanne has recently released a brand new range of mouthpieces called the Essentials Collection. And in this mouthpiece range, Theo has managed to really reduce the price of his mouthpieces so that they're much more affordable. We always think of the Theo pieces as being wonderful pieces, but they are premium level and unobtainable for many people. But now, these mouthpieces are brought to the masses. So in today's video, I'm going to be playing a lot of these mouthpieces for alto and tenor, put them through their paces, and see what I think. Theo offers three mouthpiece options: the concert, the jazz, and the contemporary. Today, we'll focus on the jazz and contemporary models. The jazz model is designed to suit all styles of jazz and big band music. According to Theo, it delivers a perfectly balanced tone, not too bright, not too dark, with just the right level of projection. The contemporary, on the other hand, is crafted to deliver a bold, bright sound that cuts through with power when needed. It's ideal for rock, pop, and smooth jazz. Now, let's put these mouthpieces to the test and compare them with some of the top models in each category to see how they measure up. So before talking about how it compared to the three mouthpieces here, I just overall want to say how much I enjoyed playing on this new jazz piece. It really does suit me. It's got such a nice core sound, and core is a word you're going to hear me use a lot in today's video because it really is a main feature of Theo mouthpieces, whether it's their Pro-Line mouthpieces or this new Essentials range. It's a very satisfying, fat core sound, which is a really great basis point for moving on and developing your tone. Very pleasant and just also very directional and free-blowing. It doesn't feel like there's sort of any wasted air like you can get in some mouthpieces where you have to really work for it. The sound is very purposeful, but also it's not a one-dimensional piece with just that sort of jazz quality to it. When you push it, there is extra kind of clarity and kind of edge in the sound, but it's a nice edge. Kind of reminds me of that Kenny Garrett sound when you really push it, that sort of bright, searing sound, but always on top of a really pleasant core. And so how does it compare with the others? We're looking at the three mouthpieces in my hand here. We've got the Mayer on the right, and let's talk about that one first of all, because it's just such a popular mouthpiece for alto. It has been, if you like, the sort of blueprint for many modern mouthpieces over the decades. And the characteristics of a Mayer are a nice core sound, very creamy, very free-blowing, with a certain pleasant edge on the top. And in terms of the Theo against the Mayer, I found there's a lot of similarities there, but if anything, there's a bit more fullness in the Theo sound. It really is a big fat core sound, slightly fatter than with the Mayer there. So it's doing really well when comparing to this very popular alto mouthpiece. Selma Jazz Flow, recently I've done videos on this and compared it to the Mayer, and they're in similar categories. But with the Selma Jazz Flow, it kind of has more of a brighter, searing sound, very free-blowing, and sweet singing sound, really. And if anything, against the Theo Jazz, the Theo Jazz feels like it's got a slightly more sort of darker, more of a core to it, whereas with the Selma, it just sails away a little bit more with that brightness on top. Quality throughout, though, with all of these three. On the V16A7, again, it's based on the Mayer concept, so you can hear a lot of similarities to the Mayer in there. A bit more edge for me, and without that same defined, pleasant core for me on the V16, so not personally my favourite, but you can hear why it does appeal to many players. So overall, with these three sort of stalwart mouthpieces here for alto, very popular overall, this new Theo entry is doing rather well. And once again, I'm actually loving the next Theo piece here, the Contemporary. I often have a fear when I move to these brighter mouthpieces that it's just going to be too edgy and the sound's going to get away from me. But I didn't quite feel that with this. I think it's been very well designed to the point where, again, Theo retains the core in the sound. It is a much brighter sound, and of course it draws you into a certain style of playing, which is what I always say. You know, you start hitting those blues scales and those split top F sharps and what have you, and it does a really great job of that. It wouldn't be so good in a sort of concert band setting and all that kind of thing, but, you know, we know this, don't we? So let's think about how it compared to these other three great mouthpieces here. I've always been a big fan of the Claude Lakey because it's such a good pop mouthpiece with a big fat core and a nice brightness on top. And it's interesting comparing the two because for me, the Claude has this kind of hollowness in the sound, which I see as a good quality, but sometimes the hollowness can just get a little bit too much, like we just lose that center, which I find is a bit more there in the new Theo Contemporary by way of comparison with these two. But still a great mouthpiece, the Claude, for that pop style of playing. With the Van Doren Jumbo Java, it's great for some people, I'm sure. I've never personally been a massive fan, as I find there's just too much edge in it for me. For some people, you might love that edge, just really kind of slapping sound. It's very attacking, and just look at the size of that baffle there. It is huge. So that is what is giving us that huge amount of edge. So yeah, that's the Van Doren, and then the Sire, so I thought I'd bring this one into the mix. This is their brightest piece, the Spark. And this, for me, has a very pleasant, free-blowing core sound again, similar in a way to the Theo, in that it's very pleasant to play. The sound just trips out. I don't think it quite has that same fullness and sort of multi-dimensional sound that we're getting with the Theo. So again, out of the four of these, the Theo is really doing very well for me. Another great design by Theo. So on the tenor side, with the jazz, again, another great piece with all of that core going on, very fat sound. You sort of think of Sonny Rollins and that style of sound. And then looking at the three mouthpieces that I compared it with. So I've always been a fan of the D'Addario Select Jazz. Very pleasant all-round sound, very sort of lacy in sound. For me, against the Theo piece, it's a slightly lighter sound, which can be a good thing. If you want that more heavyweightness in the sound, then the Theo kind of wins in that aspect, if you like. The Burn-In is an interesting one. I've always been a fan of these since they were released. The sound goes in a slightly different direction because there's a bit more cut to it. There's a very obvious rollover baffle in the Burn-In, which just gives the sound a bit more travel on top of the very obvious fat core sound. So kind of they're similar in a sense in that they've both got this thing of, they've got this great core sound going on, and then on top you've got that natural edge, but it's a controlled edge, it's a pleasant edge. With the Theo, and then with the better sax, their edge is just a bit more present, like it draws you into that world of being a bit more contemporary with the sound, with the Burn-In piece. But both great mouthpieces. And then with the Otto Ling, I've left that to last because for me it doesn't quite edge up to the level of the three I've just mentioned there. I mean, we could talk about links all day. I'm obviously not going to do that because there's such an incredible history with links, you know, going back decades. But we are dealing here with just the basic tone edge, which is a very popular upgrade mouthpiece because it has a nice, pleasant, warm sound. But with the link, there can be a tendency for the sound to be a little fluffier around the edges and without the same ability to be able to project the sound and convert the sound waves into sound. And so, that resistance is just inherent in the link. And with these other three, there isn't that resistance. The sound just flows through the mouthpiece, and particularly so with this new Theo jazz piece. So great, yeah, I'm really loving this. I think he's done a good job so far. And finally, on to the contemporaries. There's light at the end of the tunnel, guys. So, another great piece from Theo Wanne here. Again, it's just really enjoyable to play because we have that defined core sound. It's clearly a very bright mouthpiece, but a pleasantly bright mouthpiece that just allows you to do all that stuff really well. A nice searing sound. The top notes, the altissimo, all pops out very cleanly. And when you really push it, the edge doesn't get nasty and brittle, which is what can happen with some highly baffled mouthpieces. And it does have a very obvious step baffle here, with the typical grooves in the baffle that we associate with great Theo pieces. But yeah, this is not expensive, and it plays really well in that style, so very impressed. How does it compare to the others? So let's first of all pull out the Jody, because I'm a big Jody fan, and I think that everything that comes out of Jody's factory is of high quality, as is the Jet here, which is in a similar category even. And the Jet, for me, has the same kind of qualities in that we've got that free-blowing, kind of carefree nature to the sound. There's a very obvious baffle in the Jet, which gives it that nice projection. The sound just goes straight through. And it has that very obvious pop on the top of the sound, which we also get with the Theo. For me, the Theo just has a slightly more obvious sort of defined core sound to it. The Jet does have that core sound, but it's not as fat, if you like, as the Contemporary, but both great mouthpieces. Moving on to the Jumbo Java, it's kind of similar to the Alto for me, I'm afraid. I find there's just too much edge in there for me. You've got such an obvious step baffle there that then drops straight down. And it might be great for certain styles of music and for certain players who are looking for that very obvious sort of targeted, edgy sound. For me, there's just a little bit too much edge in the way I play. And then the final bright piece here, we've got the Sias Spark again. Similar characteristics to what I was describing with the Alto. Very free-blowing, pleasant. I think Sias have done a good job here. Nice core sound. Overall, it is a good piece, and it's right up there. I just found that there was a few more layers in the sound with the Theo piece for me personally. So the Theo, again, is right up there, and they have done a really good job with both of these ranges, the Jazz and the Contemporary ranges. So overall, you can hear my enthusiasm for this new range of pieces from Theo. I think they've done a great job, and it's great that they're affordable as well. I think that will appeal to many players who want to get their hands on a Theo mouthpiece, but don't perhaps want to spend £500 or even £600 on one. And I should just add, I've not mentioned it up to now, but these are available in two tip openings, the 5 and the 7 star for tenor, and on alto, the 5 and the 7. And you might think, oh, what about the 6? What about an 8 and what have you? But when it comes down to it, sometimes just less choice makes things easier for us. And they have done their research to the point where they can see that these key tip openings kind of hit target points. The 7 star gives you that on tenor, gives you that nice big full sound, and if it's just too much air for you to put down a tenor mouthpiece, then they give you the 5 for that more laid back experience where you're really not pushing the boundaries so much. And a similar thing with alto. So I like that decision to make things nice and simple on the tip openings. But overall, a great job here. The way they've made these mouthpieces cheaper is by looking at the material. It feels different under the fingers. There's more of a grainy feel to it. That doesn't bother me personally. You can see that it's the same quality of engineering as the top level Theo pieces, perfectly lined up. Tip rails and side rails, everything is engineered to absolute precision. So overall, I've not really got a bad thing to say about these mouthpieces. I can see why they were very excited at the recent NAMM show when they said, Jim, I've got a big thing to tell you here. Very exciting secret that they didn't want to let us onto at the time, but we now know about it. It's this new essential series of mouthpieces, and I think they are superb.